Video games, machine dreams of domination. Here's some interesting facts about video games. One half of the US population plays video games. This is about 150 million people. 42% of those who play video games play 3 hours more each week. Video game playing surpasses all other entertainment industries except music. This industry makes $23 billion in profits. What are the cultural effects of video game playing? Some research has found that video game playing contributes to a culture of aggressive subjectivity and play. It reinforces unjust social relations and upholds masculine fantasies of domination and fetishism of capitalism technology. Overall, it finds that violent video game playing leads to addiction and violent actions. While the correlations between violent media exposure and aggression were only in the small to moderate range, such correlations were nonetheless stronger than the association between passive smoking and lung cancer, and many municipalities have banned smoking because of that risk. And this is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Video games have continued to serve as potent conduits of the ideas and discourses most conducive to maintaining the status quo. The video game industry both mirrors and strengthens existing power relations in society, conforming reality to prevailing ideologies, social expectations, and collective fantasies. We see inequality in ideologies in media, and some examples include misogyny and violence against women. Heroes conform to hegemonic forms of masculinity. We see that there's similar conventions to porn. And we also see within the industry of game playing, there are attacks against female gamers. And an example is the Gamergate controversy. We see overall in video game playing that it invites male players to participate in simulated atrocities against women. Such games trivialize and valorize gender violence. They may also dull players' empathetic responses to the real-world victims of violence. We also see racist representation within video games. Black and Latinx communities are depicted disproportionately as drug kingpins and prostitutes. Asians are seen as martial artists or villains. Arabs and Persians are represented as bloodthirsty savages and terrorists, and whites are seen as saviors. Video games are notably more persuasive as mechanisms of social indoctrination and control than any other media. The media is the message. What McLuhan meant is that radio, television, and so on are not neutral carriers of meaning, but themselves intensify, magnify, and otherwise alter the scale of our relations with one another. The logics that drive our video games make claims about who we are, how the world functions, and what we want to become. We also find that video games have psychological effects. Video games are used in training for many occupations. It also trains mass murderers. Video games are useful for the military. You can simulate war with video games. The video game industry developed organically out of what President Dwight D. Eisenhower termed the military-industrial complex, the institutional nexus between the national security state, private military contractors, and academia. The military has invested billions of dollars in war simulations to train soldiers to kill by using video games. Video games help commanders engage in more effective battlefield tactics and strategies. One particular game that's used by the military or has used by the military is Space War. Video games are used to recruit youth into the military. It's also used to condition soldiers. Some video games are created to demonstrate or simulate large-scale battlefield simulation. Game designers scripturally model games on the latest in U.S. military doctrine, equipment, and weaponry. Some game companies even manufacture hardware and software for real-world weapon systems. The Pentagon has responded by integrating Xbox and Wii controllers into a growing number of its weapon systems and robotics control. And so we see here where the video game world and the military world has combined. The result is a new Orientalism in which the gamer involved in the military shooter set in the Middle East is forever programming strategic containment of the other. Demonizing authorized enemies of the U.S. state is also found in military-related video games. We see the breakdown of boundaries between military and civilian life with these war games. What results is a new Orientalism in which the gamer involved in a military shooter set in the Middle East is forever programming strategic containment of the other, the dark-skinned barbarian perpetually threatening the innocent Western civilization. Even when the content of the video is not overtly violent, the medium of video games conveys an educative message that instrumental manipulation of the world, self, and other is both natural and desirable. The cognitive and behavioral modality built into the overwhelmingly majority of video games is control of the representational world rather than an attitude of receptivity towards it. There is an instrumental reason for this, a form of subjectivity, consciousness, and action in which the entirety of the living world and cosmos gets treated as a thing to be manipulated or even destroyed at will. Virtual reality leads to the subject's disembodiment, their estrangement for the real, sensuous world. The instrumentalist conception of the world achieves its fullest representational expression in first-person shooter games, where the subject's interaction with others is typically represented by a disembodied weapon floating in midair. Embodying such conceptions of life is what can only be described as a neoliberal ideological work. The computer video game is in many ways the ideal commodity of post-Fordism capitalism, the exemplary form of a system that now requires a ceaseless stream of new commodities with ever-shortening product cycles and lifespans. It is so to avoid systematic crisis and breakdown, a form of neoliberalism.